Hello, everyone, and welcome to another informative episode of the Florida Business Forum podcast. Let's open the Florida Business Forum floodgates and let the information begin to flow. Here's your Florida Business Forum information guru and anchorman, Sam Yates. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Florida Business Forum podcast. And my guest today, I have Rosie Pova. Rosie is an acclaimed children's author and writing coach and inspiration and much more. And I really want to get into the type of books that she is so famous for, and I'll explain about that in a moment. But Rosie, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sam. It's a pleasure being here.
You know, I always start by getting to know our guests. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Yes, absolutely. As you mentioned, I'm a multi-published children's book author, speaker, writing coach, also a mom and entrepreneur. So I do wear many hats, but yeah, it keeps me busy and it keeps me entertained all the time. So yes.
Well, you obviously have a great ability to tell stories. You have a passion that I can even hear now in what you're doing. But how did you get started in becoming an author?
Yes, I really didn't set out to become an author. I've always been a writer from a very young age. That was one of my favorite things to do. I would always write different short stories and poetry, and essays in school were my favorite, and even lyrics to songs. And that's how I processed the world. If I was going through something as a kid, I would write, and that gets me out of my head. And then also writer and reader. I used to love to escape, as a kid, and be in a different world and feel like the characters are my friends. And I was just really introverted and with like a homebody. So listening to music, reading, things like that were my favorite. And I was also very crafty. So yeah, I've always been a writer. I didn't necessarily know that I would become an author. At one point, I was thinking I would be a journalist, or because yes, I wanted to deliver news and write. Then I also thought at one point I would be a flight attendant, because I wanted to also travel the world. And growing up in Bulgaria was not possible at the time to travel whenever you please or whenever you want. So that was another dream of mine. I thought, hey, if I have that job, I'll get to travel and see the world. So, but things, don't always turn out the way you plan them. So, as an adult, I kind of went back to my passion for writing once I had my own kids and started reading stories to them. I just immediately remembered how much I loved writing, and I wanted to try and write picture books in particular. And that's how it all started. It was a long journey, though.
But it sounds like everything is going well for you. Now, you mentioned picture books. There's a difference between writing and writing with picture books. Tell us a little bit about that difference and how you visualize it.
Yes, there is, especially when the author and illustrator are not the same person. And that's how picture books are really, unusual, because that's when the words and the art come together, collaborate, and create something beautiful. And like I said, this is a team effort and collaboration. When you write, you need to leave room for the pictures to tell part of the story. Like a big part of the story is actually in the pictures. They're not supposed to just mirror the words, and so you have to decide, what the balance is, where you say things and where pictures will show things. So that's a bit challenging. And then once you have a vision, then you have to also let go of that vision, because when the illustrator comes into the picture, so to speak, they have to do their own magic and use their own creativity and imagination and create the characters. And they might be very, very different from what you had in mind or what was in your head and in your vision. And then, but that keeps it interesting.
It sounds like it's a winning combination, a great combination of words and then someone else visualizing it. What a fascinating combination indeed. Have you ever been disappointed that it didn't quite capture what you wanted?
I've been surprised most of the times, yes, because again, you can't help it but have a vision for your characters, and once you see the art, it could be so very different from your own vision. And at first, there's this shock for a moment, and then you kind of have to absorb that and look from another angle. But yeah, there are definitely surprises. So I'm always eager to find out what the illustrator had in mind. But yeah, like in one of my stories, the principal is a bat. So who would have, or the godmother is a pink dragon. So I would never imagine that, but that's what happened, and then it makes it so much more fun.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Sunday Rain. That is one of your books, and it's widely acclaimed. It's gotten lots of great reviews. What makes it so special?
Yes, it's a quiet book is what they call it. And there's this sort of belief that quiet books are hard to publish and hard to find a home, but it was actually one of the easiest sales that I made with this book. And the story is lyrical, and the character is kind of a reflection on my own personality, because he's a reader, introverted. He moved to a new place, didn't have friends, is trying to connect, but uses his imagination just like I did as a kid. And actually, the idea for this story came from a childhood memory of mine when I was playing outside with my friends, and it started pouring. It was summertime, and it was so hot, and but the rain was so warm. I was the only one who stayed and played, and I felt so free and happy. And I remembered that I always loved rain. Like growing up, every time it rained, I felt something special. And so rain has been with me for a long time, and that's how the story was born. But I think readers just connected with it and the character, and yeah.
Now, what did your children think of the book?
Well, they love it. Obviously, it's their mom's book, but I think by the time that book was published, they were already outgrowing this phase of picture books. So they kind of became my editors rather than readers.
That's good too. I value that whenever I write something. It's like, oh, I always want to get that other set of eyes on it because I'm going to miss something or juxtapose something. But you're also a writing coach. How do you
Mhm.
do that? And what's your process and method?
Yes, I became a writing coach because I was asked to teach on writing, and I've always gotten a lot of questions. I know back when I was starting out, how confused I was and how frustrated at times with all the rejections and just not knowing the business and thinking you know the craft, but not really, and then being stuck for a long time. So I didn't want any writer to go through all the struggles that I went through and learned the hard way through many mistakes. So I created a course, and in creating that course, it's a 10 module course that it's a step-by-step guidance pretty much on the craft, things that I wish I knew at the very beginning, but it took me a long time to figure out. And I thought, what would I want it to have? And that's what I created for other writers. And on top of that, like accountability is important. Feedback is important, making sure you are getting reliable feedback, like you said, and improving on the story, knowing how to implement, because just knowing things is not enough. If you're not applying it to your work, then it's useless. So all of these components that I include in my coaching and teaching, and it comes down to those three elements, Sam. And I always say that it's mindset, it's craft, and it's business knowledge. Just knowing how to navigate the business and not make the mistakes. So that's what I use and my method.
I would imagine right now there is someone in our audience that's saying, I always wanted to write. I don't know how to go about it. How can they get in touch with you?
Yes, the easiest way is through my website, rosiejpova.com. There are a lot of resources for writers. There are free resources. They can always schedule a consultation with me, and check out the course. This is always the first thing I would recommend, building that solid foundation on the craft, and that comes through the course.
Creative process. I have to admit that I've been a journalist for years, a television anchor for many, many years, and I write differently because it took me a long time to learn to write to be heard, which is different than writing to be read if you're writing in a standard AP style or something similar. And it's as you said, a process. But is there something that you look for when you're coaching your authors to be that can tell you, great, this person's going to make it, or maybe we need to work a little harder? What do you look for in their creative process?
Yeah, so we all start somewhere. We're not born knowing, and that's really rare. And at first, when you're just a beginner, like I said, depending on your background and your experience with writing, it could go in a very different direction than what modern picture book writing looks like today. And again, it's very different from what it was when we were growing up and reading all those fairy tales and picture books at the time. They're very different. And if we're going by that, would be very off off track on the craft. So we have to sort of unlearn that and learn the new ways of writing and engaging with modern audiences. So I look for that factor. I want to know where they are on the journey and how well they're telling a story. For this particular audience, again, knowing that this book will work with pictures and it's not going to be a chapter book and not a middle grade novel, anything like that. And then once we assess their level, I know what things to address in the craft. And also, it depends on the person. Some people struggle with procrastination and self-doubt and all the other things that we need to work on the mindset, because all the great resources are not going to help someone who is like self-sabotaging, right? So I look at that and then the writing level and the business knowledge, and then we combine that and come up with a plan.
As I was looking at what you have written and taking a look at your website and doing a little other research, just the true news guy and me wanting to know more, 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 multicultural background, has that played a big role in your writing?
Yes, it has, because I believe it's important. And for kids to see themselves, every child should see themselves in a picture book, right? In literature in general. But we're starting young. So and then also see other cultures in a book, so that it becomes, the norm, right? So it is important to me, and many of my characters are reflecting my own background. And I would encourage everyone to write from their own experience and background, and be mindful of that diversity and inclusion in literature, because it really is important. That's what the world is. That's what the real world looks like. Why would literature be different, right? So I'm very passionate about that as well.
James Patterson, author, lives in our area, and he recently was banned by the state of Florida for one of his books. Florida has a reputation for book bans, and to me, it's not what we should be encouraging with children. So, does that hit a nerve with you as well?
It does, and I agree with you. And I think Florida, as I mentioned, it's similar to Texas. I'm in Texas, and yeah, I don't understand it. It's such a big topic. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in a nutshell, just don't do that. If um, you're kind of depriving kids from what they need, what the world is. Again, it's a reflection of the real world. Would you, if you had the power, would you ban like real life people just because they feel uncomfortable? like what, you send them to another planet, what are you going to do, right? So why do that with literature? And I don't get it, and it needs to be changed.
Fingers crossed. One of your books, the title is sort of an interesting title, The School of Failure, a story about success. It sounds like it's at opposite ends, but tell us a little bit more.
Yes, yes. And when I was I was trying to come up with a title that would be intriguing in that way and appeal to educators mostly. And I thought, hey, school, when we think of school, usually we go there to learn how to be successful, right? But why not go to school and learn how to fail? Because a lot of people struggle with that, and failure is like we're being dramatic and it's the end of the world, and that's what the characters are going through. Where in fact failure could be our friend, sometimes even our best friend, because first of all, it's redirection, it's protection, it's redirection, and we learn from those mistakes so that we can grow and be better. And if we never ever made mistakes, we would just be very stagnant and very boring. So that was my exploration of this topic, and I'm really happy with that book, and educators do love it.
My
So
wife has this saying that she applies to me quite often: good, better, best. Never let it rest until the good is better and the better is best. And she gives me that advice sometimes a little bit too often because I'll get to a point where I'm frustrated. I was like, I don't think I can do that. And she'll like, good. But, so I think that the whole idea of learning from failure, or learning that sometimes that is what's going to happen, that's a great idea. I think it's an awesome idea. But you do have a new book coming out in 2025, less than 7 months from now. Sally's Musical Tale. I can't wait. Can you tease us a little bit about it?
yes, so another story about failing and thinking outside the box, and finding success, because again, failure is part of success. But it's about a snake who dreams of playing the piano and is determined to succeed, even though, the obvious challenges are in front of her and a lot of naysayers. But she must find a way to realize her dream.
What's next on the horizon for Rosie?
Getting ready for, well, taking a little break in July, which is also my birthday month, but doing some traveling and trying to escape the heat, the Texas heat. I'm sure you can relate to that. And then after that, getting ready to work with more clients. We're just launching a new program, which is going to be focused on PR and marketing. A lot of writers struggle with that, and they want to be writers. They want to sit behind the desk, or, write in their notebooks, and they want to be the creative, not put on this hat of being a marketer and promoter and a business owner. Once you have that book, they're kind of lost, but it's needed, because nowadays just publishers don't do as much marketing for authors as they used to. So a lot of it relies on the author, and they need help with that. So I'm really excited about this new program, and also getting ready for my own promotional campaigns and tours for the new book, and sharing with a lot of schools and uh, my audience. I can't wait. So yeah.
Well, two things. One, 16 July, birthday. That's mine. So we share that. But in your next quest, if you ever need any public relations marketing advice, I'll gladly lend my advice. I have some 30 plus years of that in addition to the journalism part. I can't say it'll be good advice, but I'm always willing to give advice. So,
Excellent. Yes.
you
I
know,
always would take your advice, Sam. Yes.
consider it done. I would be glad to do that. You create fictional characters just like the snake that wants to play the piano. If you could be a fictional character, who or what would you be?
Ooh, I could be. Um, well, I could tell you that when I was little, of course, we didn't have a lot of books. At least I didn't have a lot of books growing up, like children's books. And mostly it was fairy tales for me. So, this being a princess, I loved dressing up and being fancy and pretending I would live on a castle. And probably a princess. I would love to be, to experience that type of, but if I were to meet a fictional character, I would say I hang out with Matilda.
Well said, well said. Rosie Pova, author, creative person. You are doing so much that, I think you should be an inspiration for others. So one more time, if someone wants to know more, they want to learn how to be creative, they want to get into the next phase of what you are doing, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes, you're welcome to connect. I can't wait to help you in any way I can, and hear about your journey and projects and all of that. And again, you can find me at rosiejpova.com. Any educators, librarians out there also connect with me if you wanted to host an author visit. I am now booking for next school year. So yeah, get in touch.
It has been indeed my pleasure to have you here. Oh, but wait, most difficult question of all. Will you come back at some point for another episode?
Absolutely.
I knew, I have yet to be turned down. So I know that experience may come one day and I will be so upset. No, just kidding. But I'm glad.
I don't
Seriously.
Yeah, I would never believe that. You're such a
Yeah.
great host. Thank you for having me.
It has been my pleasure. And for everyone listening or watching right now, I am Sam Yates, and this has been my pleasure to have Rosie with us today. We've created this Florida Business Forum podcast because business news, not-for-profit news, just seems to be disappearing. So we're going to do our best to fill that void. Until our next episode, the Florida Business News Forum podcast, have a great day, everybody. The Florida Business Forum is dedicated to showcasing Florida businesses and CEOs of all sorts to promote their business or not-for-profit in the only business forum of its type in Florida. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, have a great day, everyone, and stay tuned for more business.